Shut up and sit down.
Hey everybody, Adam and John back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Today we have Cody Rich from the Rich Outdoors on the line. Going to talk a little bit about just Western hunting in general, kind of maybe some hunts that you can do that aren't as involved as our elk hunt or kind of things like that. You know, we're planning our antelope hunt, and so hopefully we can glean a little bit of information from him on that. So how you doing tonight, Cody?
Pretty good. About yourself?
We're doing good, I'd say. I mean, it's not snowing and it's March, so we're looking forward to turkey season and kind of getting out of this funk of the wintertime.
So for you guys, like, is that kind of the next big thing is turkey season?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to get at on the podcast is like for us, you know, there isn't spring bear here. You know, we're in Michigan, so it's like we've got turkey season, and then from turkey season, there's like nothing to hunt. It's fishing season, and then you know, September is small game. Right. So there's a big chunk in the middle there where we're kind of looking for something to do.
So is I guess what's the big fishing that you guys do?
Should we walleye fish, perch? Some of the guys like to go out in the big lake, go after salmon, steelhead in the rivers. So
that's right. You guys do have salmon and steelhead. I forgot about that.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're right, you know, maybe 5 miles from Lake Michigan. So I mean that's right where we're at. We take a lot of that for granted because there's lakes and rivers, and you know the fishing opportunities here are, you know, right around the corner. I mean, we're 100 yards from a lake right now, so it's...
Yeah, there's a lake in between his house and my house, so...
So fishing's on the brain in the summertime.
Well, in the wintertime, too, because once whitetail season stops, you're looking forward to turkey season, then it's ice fishing, so...
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. No, it's kind of cool. I mean, you guys doing the elk hunt thing. I'm kind of curious to ask you a few about that. I'm going to try not to take over your podcast because I asked too many questions as a fellow podcaster, but it'd be kind of fun to talk about that. But yeah, I mean, it is your show. So if I just keep rambling, be sure to like, hey, remind me.
No. You know, part of it is our listeners want to hear from us, and part of it they want to hear from the guests. So I think, you know, They definitely want to hear from John. They hear a lot from me, so I'm kind of the same way. So I guess for anybody that's not familiar, can you give us a background on like your history with hunting, and then you know kind of how that moved into the podcast and kind of the things that you're doing right now?
Yeah. So I mean, I pretty much started hunting before I could walk. I was in the pack and just grew up hunting. I don't even remember my first hunt. So, but it's always kind of just been one of my biggest passions. And I, you know, grew up on a farm and wandered around and shot all kinds of critters and cooked them in the backcountry, what I thought was backcountry, more like upper 40. And from there, my dad had a huge obsession with elk. And so naturally I followed down that path and had a huge obsession with elk from the beginning and got into archery. I was probably 9 or 10. And just kind of has grown from there. It started as elk hunting, you know, locally, and when that wasn't enough, then I started going to Idaho, and from there it kind of just blossomed into hunting all over the country and chasing elk, and that's kind of grown into, you know, what's next, and eventually, you know, I was basically tired of the magazine podcast or the magazine ads or magazine articles, I guess, and just wasn't enough information. I thought it'd be cool to do a podcast, and so started a podcast about 4 years ago now, and been doing it ever since, and loving it. Still obsessed with elk, but I also like to chase just about everything out west. So, and I mean, I haven't got to hunt much on the east side of the country, but pretty much game for anything that's an adventure. So that's kind of my background and I guess my philosophy, if you will.
So with all of your hunts, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were coming from Oregon, right? So it's like from, you were going east to hunt west, kind of like for us, right? So
yeah, when people say coming out west, like I grew up 30 minutes from the ocean, so realistically, I always went east to go hunting for most everything. I mean, I still hunted Roosevelts on the coast, but like when you grow up on the coast, hunting Roosevelts and blacktails is fun, but like it's always one of the big trips to go over east, and we call it over east, which is like Eastern Oregon. But yeah, most of everything I've done. So almost similarly, like I've deer hunted in places that I was like 17, 18 hours away from home. So kind of like you guys coming out west, me essentially going east to mule deer hunt for 18-hour drives. Yeah, that was kind of. Yeah, going east, not west.
So with that, your trips to the eastern, western states, I don't know how to approach that. We'll call it west for sake of consistency.
Out west.
So, what species have you hunted? And I guess what is your favorite to hunt?
I've hunted most species outside of like trophy species, and I've done a little bit of that, but not a lot. So trophy species out west would be considered like your sheep, your goat, your moose, and so those I haven't spent much time hunting, but pretty much everything else I've hunted, from whitetails. And I love hunting whitetails in Oregon. Turkeys all over, mule deer, elk. By far, I think elk is definitely my favorite. It's my go-to. I love hunting elk, but at the same time, I love hunting everything else. So like, I'm pretty passionate about elk hunting, but I don't think I've ever missed, a deer season of some kind, and bear season, a turkey season, antelope season, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, archery elk season is only open for 1 month out of the year.
Yeah, that's I want to get into that because we're going to go. We're planning to do an antelope hunt. And I've got a million questions, even just about timing and pressure. But before we get into that, it might kind of transition into that. But so for a guy who wants to do one of these Western trips, and, we did our elk hunt, and we had this idea in our head of like what we needed to do, how it was going to play out, and the amount of preparation that went into it was, I couldn't even tell you, 10 months, 6 months at least of, just living, breathing, trying to take in everything that we could for elk hunting. And I'd say we got out there, and I was just talking to somebody at the BHA event a week or so ago, and it was like, you get out there, and then it's like, well, shit, what do we do now? Because you can read about it or, listen to people talk about it and study all the maps and do all that stuff. But when it starts not going the way that you thought it was going to go or whatever, it's like, man, you had to do enough research to figure it out. And so I think for an elk hunt, there's, even just with the gear, a pretty substantial barrier to entry. Whether you're going to go with a guide and it's going to cost you $5,000 or something like that. 'Cause that's my dad goes out rifle in Colorado, and that's kind of like the rate, and doesn't include tags or anything like that. But his gear situation is much different than what we were doing, hiking and bringing everything with us. So I guess on those, what would be a good hunt to kind of dip your toes into going out west?
Man, I don't know. Like there's so many variables here, and it would depend so much. Like if you have a longing to just hunt elk at some point in your life, I really do think I think people put it on a pedestal. One thing, as you were talking, it makes me think like, when you guys thought about an elk hunt before, you're like, okay, we're going to do this, and you start planning on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the difficulty level that you thought it was at that point? Or like, how overwhelming was it? How high on the pedestal did you put that hunt?
10.
Yeah. Well, so and that's coming from John. So like I have a background with the Marines, so
it's similar. I mean, it's just planning and logistics, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think like at the core of it, it was like getting back out there with a pack on my back and getting to move, you know.
Yeah, but even, I mean, that's not, I mean, just from my point of view was the never hunting elk, you know, we're coming from a whitetail state where, you know, we go out, we do a little scouting and hang tree stands or carrier stands in, set up on runways, you know, and funnels, whatever. So now we're going out to Idaho and to a spot we've never been, and we're hunting an animal we have no, you know, history with at all. And so learning how to call, learning, you know, what to look for, you know, and I mean, yeah, the backpack, you know, backcountry, you know, camping and hiking and all that. I mean, I've never done it, and it was a little bit, you know, intimidating at first, but it was more about the hunt, you know, going after an elk and like Adam was saying, getting out there and trying to figure it out. You know, all right, we're here now. What do we do? You know, so
yeah.
That was the part for me that was the toughest.
Well, and what I lead to that question with is basically, you know, how hard did you think it was, and then driving back, how different did you feel? Like, man, if I did that again, I think we could really do it. Or like, what was the conversation on the trip home?
What? So the whole time, I mean, I probably told it to John last week when we were shooting. It's like, I feel like I let John down, just in the sense of like twofold. Like, so John, like I learned how to call elk, but I learned how to make elk noises. John was studying to be Paul Medell. So like, so he knew like every situation of like how to, what the sound was, everything. And so situationally, John is 1,000% better caller, than I am. But we called this bull for, so first of all, so we had realistic expectations, I feel like. So we went out there with the expectation of hear an elk, see an elk, and get an opportunity. That was it. Because we knew what we didn't know. Like, so we went out there in kind of a low density elk area, with some inside information from someone who has a property out there and who had hunted the area before. And then we took everything that we learned, kind of put all our eggs in, like, we had like a plan A, B, and C kind of. And, you know, so that was our expectation going out there. Well, you know, we called in 3 elk, to bow range, and just, it didn't work out. And one was because of wind, one was because of timing, our setup, and then the other one was just, I mean, there was just enough barrier between us with all the deadfall and everything. I mean, and why I say I let him down is I had a 62-yard shot at, you know, for a guy that's never, that's seen 3 elk in his life or 5 elk or whatever. You know, we called it a spike, a raghorn, and then a giant with whale tails and, you know, wider than my shoulders, just a giant in my eyes. You know what I mean? And like I said, we saw him in that order. So we saw a spike, and then a raghorn, and then, you know, what was probably the herd bull. And I had him at 62 yards, but I was standing on a deadfall 8 feet up in the air, and I had a 1-foot section to shoot, you know, 30 yards in front of me that everything would have had to go perfect. And I was like, I can't take that shot. I feel like John might have taken that shot. It was an hour plus calling sequence to make everything come together. But on the way back, it was like if we would have had 2 more days, we would have killed an elk. I wouldn't even.
Yeah, for sure. We would. And let me just say that I was not disappointed in with Adam. I mean, I told him, I said, I would have been more disappointed if you would have taken that shot thinking that, you know, it wasn't your opportunity just because you thought you were letting me down and then wounded the animal or, then I would have been disappointed. But that calling sequence with the big bull, that made my trip. I mean, we didn't kill anything. I don't even care. It was awesome. I mean, the interaction I had with that bull, I mean, I was screaming at him and he would scream back, and it was, I mean, my knuckles were bloody and I was full of black soot from rolling around in the burn, and I mean, it was unbelievable. So, but yeah, on the way back, that was our conversation. Like, man, if we had a couple more days, I'm confident we would have killed an elk.
How many days did you guys go for?
We hunted 8 days.
8 days.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot until you start elk hunting, and
exactly.
It burns through fast.
Well, it took us 5 days to get on the elk, and then we had 3 encounters in 3 days. I mean, it was just we found the elk at that point.
To circle back on your question on, like, what's the best, entry level hunt? It's hard because to me there's nothing like that experience, and I don't think there's anything out here out west that will hook a guy like that experience of that bull with whale tails coming in and all the adrenaline that goes along with it. Antelope is a great hunt. It's a good starter kit, and I think it's fun, but it is nowhere near the same intensity level as going on an elk hunt. And so it's hard because it depends on the person. And, you can do either. I do think that people put coming out west and hunting elk on a pedestal. And I think there's a few things like people can do a little bit better, not to like downplay what you guys did. I think you did. It was great. I mean, you got into elk. That was a huge accomplishment. And, if Lady Luck would have swung just a little bit in either direction on a couple scenarios, you'd be having, elk steaks right now. But there's probably, you can probably look back on it yourselves and be like, well, here's what we would have done differently, and those types of things. I think more so people get wrapped up in the elk calling. And to me, I don't know that that's the most important thing. I think the ability to find elk quickly and efficiently is, I think, the biggest problem when you go on your first elk hunt. I think a lot of people spend 5 days finding elk and then 2 days trying to call elk in. Don't get me wrong, like, calling elk, it's great and it's really important as well, but being efficient in finding elk and being efficient with your what if scenarios or plan B scenarios, I think is one of the most important things and most underrated things. Would you guys agree, kind of in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. It was 4 days. We seen our first elk on the 4th day. But then what happened with us is we got hung up. We didn't stick to our original plan, because once we seen that first elk, then we kind of we kept kind of going back. Well, that first elk on the 4th day, we were walking up calling, and we got a response. Then it happened so fast, and then the wind switched up on us, and then we got done with that one, kind of regrouped, and it was an hour and a half, 2 hours later, we set up and did some blind calling, and all of a sudden that's when the raghorn come in on us. And it was right within 300 yards or so from where so we didn't go with our original plan and head back to where we originally wanted to go, and till the second to last day is when we finally made it back there, and that's where we found the mother lode. Basically, we found the wallow. We found we found his bedroom, and it was tore up, and we
blew a herd of elk out of there just getting there.
Yeah.
And so,
and that's what you're looking for, right?
Right.
So I think I've had enough experiences. Kind of in my early 20s, I was working a lot, and some years I would not get very much time to get an elk hunt. I'd have 3 or 4 days here or there, and I would be stuck in a hotel room somewhere just thinking about elk hunting. And so I had a lot of time to plan. And so basically I learned to be as efficient with my 3 or 5 days that I possibly could. And so I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. And like, you have to hunt every day like it's your last day. Like the first 3 days I'm there, I'm going to cover ground nonstop 18 hours a day and I got to find a mother lode, because I know there's a mother lode somewhere. Like there's a pile of elk just going bonkers somewhere. I just got to find them. And so like, that's, when I come to a new state, if you threw a dart at a map in Idaho and said I had to hunt there this year, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to map out every single possible plan, not even plan A through D. Like I want to know every plan that's possible. And then I'm going to try to rethink, okay, where are the people going to be? And I'm going to just map out what I think all the people are going to be. And now I'm going to map out, all these different scenarios. I'm like, okay, I really like this. Now how do I be efficient with my scenario? So how do I, what side of the mountain are most of my plans look like I could cover in the shortest amount of time? So like this entire unit, right, and just imagine this unit makes up one mountain, which is almost never happens, but like hypothetically it's just one mountain in the middle of this unit. And so I'm like, I have 6 hunt plans on the north end of this unit. I could hunt, all these drainages. I could go up this ridge and check this saddle. I could check this north face. And then on the south end, I have 2 or 3, and they're spread out 10 miles apart. The first place I want to look is definitely the north side of that unit, just because the efficiency of being able to hunt 6 different hunts, 7 different hunts, consecutively, and be right on top of one after the other. And so like just thinking about things like that and like how I plan. I don't know if that helps you guys kind of think about, when you're going out there. I think so many people are like, I'm going to go to Idaho. Yeah. They kind of plan it out, but they really don't have the plan B like they should. And I think a lot of people will have, okay, here's what we're going to do. If that doesn't work, we'll go here. I mean, to me, that is an insufficient plan. Like we got to have this mapped out every single scenario we can. And that's the thing, is like when you don't have the ability to scout it and you're not on the ground all summer looking at it, then I think it's really important to kind of go through as much as that checklist in your head as you can, or on paper as you can, before you get there.
Well, I think the hard part about that, and I think you're 100% right for the next time we go out there. But if you're not tagging along with someone who's done it before, and you're just looking at each other like, well, what do we do? Like, I don't know. What do you think we should do? It's like, how long do you spend at each of those places? I mean, because the first place we walked into was overrun with tracks and rubs. There was an old wallow, but there was no sound whatsoever. There was no calling, no anything.
Not only that, I mean, we didn't see an elk in that area, but like I said, there was a ton of tracks. I mean, rubs, everything. It looked good. It just, they weren't there.
Yeah, which it's tough. I mean, it could have been they were there early in the summer. They might have moved. They could have got pushed by wolves, predators, people. Elk tend to move. I mean, they'll bounce over a canyon, no problem.
Right.
Which is tough. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. Like if I went whitetail deer hunting up in your guys' country, and I'm like, well, there's deer sign everywhere. There should be deer here. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't mean that. Which is tough. You never know. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So how long are you spending in an area, or what is the at what point do you make the decision that you're going to boogie? Like
are we talking, like, there's a couple variations. So, I mean, I spent most of my time these days looking for the top 1 to 5% of bulls in a unit. So I'm looking for the 350 bull in an area, or a 400 bull if it exists, or something, the top minute percentage point of an elk. If I was going to, and this year I think I am actually going to go to Idaho, we're going to take one of my Patreons and just show them exactly how I would do it. And from start to finish, how to scout, how to look for elk, how to find elk on the mountain, how to kill an elk, all that. And so in that case, where I'm just looking for essentially a broadside elk, probably a 5-point or better, I am going to cover ground. I don't care if there's, elk sign everywhere. If there's aren't elk cocking, I'm probably not going to stay in there. And it also depends on how open it is. I mean, I am pretty versatile in being able to glass and call and do all the techniques. So a lot of guys are just call guys, or some guys are just glassing guys. My background, I feel like I'm more comfortable in the timber calling an elk, so that's probably what I would stick to. And if I'm covering ground until a bull eagles at me, and he wants to play, and I'll check every drainage. It's like I'm not hunting any one drainage. I'm hunting the entire unit, the entire mountain. Like that's my playground for the next 8 days, and we're gonna find the elk that wants to play on that playground.
So you had asked what would we do differently, or what how would we change our scenarios. So you say you're talking about drainages and things like that. I think our main focus was, trying to find the transition from like water to the north facing slopes, right? So that's kind of like where everything we did, we kind of went up, and we went down a little bit, but we never got into any elk when we went down into these drainages. I guess, how could we have changed that strategy, or what are you looking for? You're just looking for one to sound off, so you're not.
Yeah. So it's going to depend on. I mean, you've probably listened to a lot of these podcasts, but it's going to depend on time of year. So, what was the dates you guys were there?
We were there for the first 10 days.
So September 1 through 10.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it depends on the area. I've hunted places in Idaho where a lot of the big bulls will stay. And see, this gets into like, I'm looking for the big bulls and not necessarily the elk. So the elk are essentially the herd of elk, which is going to be the cows, the raghorns, the spikes. Most of your big bulls are going to be off either high up or down low. So they're going to be in deep, dark drainages, or they're going to be way up on top of a mountain. It just depends on the terrain and how those elk use. Essentially, they're getting away from people. Some bulls like to go really high, and they're not going to get people up there. So they live in these, avalanche chutes and on the edges of them where the wind's perfect and swirls all the time. And so essentially, like the big bulls, or most of your mature bulls, are going to be away from the herd of elk. It's really important for me to know where the herd of elk is, because like you're thinking about where elk are bedding and where they're watering. I almost pay zero attention to where elk are watering. In my history, I've just had zero luck trying to figure that out. And most elk switch their waters. They'll find little creeks. Out west, there's just water, and they don't need much. I mean, it's a minute creek that has, maybe a seep on one spot that I don't even know about. It's not something you can pattern like you would a whitetail. So I almost pay no attention to it. North-facing slopes are good to look at on a map, and it might be a good starting point to try to find some elk, but it's not the end-all, be-all, I think, that some people make it out to be. I mean, you'll find elk where elk are, and usually that's away from people. That's a good starting point. So going back to that, like how could you change instead of looking there? I would cover ground until I found the herd of elk. Now, depending on dates, that's going to tell me some different information on what they're doing, where they're going. But early September, we're looking at a bunch of elk that are together. You may have some 5 to 6 year old bulls that are trying to start to sound off and pipe off, and they're going to be within earshot of the big herds. And sometimes you get the big bulls that'll come in there and start looking around too. It depends on each individual elk has a different personality. And then, I've hunted elk where it was nothing but cows and raghorns until the 12th of September. And then like out of nowhere, there's just big bulls everywhere, and I can't explain it. So, those are the things that come from experience. Like you talked about, it's just what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so as I think about it, when I get to a unit, say I show up in Idaho and I'm in unit, I don't know, just throw a number out there, 66 or something. It doesn't matter. 36, 39. If I get to unit 39, I want to be like, okay, here's the places I think I'll find elk away from people. And so I am locating. I'm covering ground and locating. And I'm trying to find most of those young bulls, those satellites, the raghorns, the 5 points, they'll pipe off, morning, evening. Sometimes they'll pipe off. And that's going to tell me where the herd is, which is good information. It's not the end all be all. And if I want to just kill an elk, I'll probably go after that herd in the mornings or evenings. Even, midday maybe. It just depends on weather. You can hunt some big bulls in the middle of the day, but sometimes those small bulls. I mean, it just depends. If you ain't got anything else to do, you might as well try to call them in. Now, if that's the only herd I know about and it's not the perfect scenario, maybe I'd bypass. Now we're getting like deep into tactics territory. But essentially, I'm looking for the elk in that unit. I just want to know where elk are.
And so, we chose Idaho because, we had an opportunity with someone that knew an area in there. So we had a jumping off point, a place to drop our coolers and all that stuff. And, someone who had some knowledge of the area, and it was any elk. So it wasn't spikes or 4 on one side or branch bull or, was cow, anything like that. So that was, I think, one of the things that we looked at it as a positive thing because if we had an opportunity to shoot an elk, and we had talked about that even before we went out there, was like, if you get an opportunity, it's going to be the first elk that you get an opportunity at. And we were both cool with shooting a spike or a cow or anything, that we. Yeah. But as far as different states, we've talked a lot about Idaho. Of all the states out west, and with all of you do with the Wapiti Wednesday and the Tag Tuesday and all of that, talking about all of these different tags, draws, et cetera, if someone just wanted to do an elk hunt and get out there, do it by themselves for archery elk, what would be the states that you'd be looking at?
I still think Idaho is one of the best states out there for that. If I could draw a tag in New Mexico, great, sweet. I think that's a bonus. I think it's a better state, and I would put in for New Mexico. If I'm getting on Go Hunt, and I'm gonna just, hey, what units that are worth going to, right? And so make sure it's worth going there. For me, New Mexico is a great unit, or it's a great state. Awesome elk hunting. It's a long ways away, and so I put that into consideration. Idaho has always been the closest, and so that's kind of the tag that I've always picked up as a second tag. It's over the counter. I can buy it during season. That's a huge benefit to me. So if I tag out, I can run over to Idaho and grab a tag and keep the party going. Wyoming's great. If I could draw a general Wyoming tag with 0 points, I'd take that over Idaho. And so it's a little bit it's all relevant, I guess. I think I don't know Colorado real well. I've never hunted there. I know guys do it and do it well. I guess if I had it, I could probably go there and figure it out. I think Idaho's a little bit tougher, Colorado's a little bit tougher to get away from people. But, Idaho's a great choice because most of those places, like you said, it's any elk.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that this elk hunt came about was John was planning a hunt in Montana, and it turned into 10 guys going for a romp through the woods to hunt elk. And so he didn't want to do that, that big of a party that it wasn't the trip that he was looking for. And so one of the questions that I got, and I want to dig into this a little bit because I think I see not an issue, but one of the things I would point out to other people as maybe a caution is what kind, without giving away anything, what kind of advice did you get? Was it if you go to ABC drainage, I've seen elk there before? No, I mean, I don't think so. We sat down with the maps, and he's like, I used to camp here, and I've killed a bull here. I killed my first elk down there. They're usually here. There's some water here. There used to be a wallow up there. So that's some pretty good info. Yeah. Yeah. So, and was it accurate?
For the most part, I mean.
Yeah, I would say. But like I said, it took us X amount of time to get there. One of the things that I think he was doing for us too was giving us kind of an easy entrance to elk hunting, because I mean the elevation we were at was between 55 to 66 or something like that. So we weren't real high And like I said, the truck was about 5,000, and we were,
the highest point we made it up to was 65. So
yeah, so everything was pretty kind of easy. So I think he put us over there saying like, look, I know that there's elk around here. There's not a lot of other hunters that go in there. There's not a ton of elk, but there's elk there, and you guys should, kind of be able to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I see happen a lot. And it's great to have a starting point, because you just look at the state of Idaho, it's very hard to be like, where the hell do I go? Whereas when you kind of even just get a starting point, that's great, because it's just like, okay, that's where we're going. At least we have that. What I see a lot of people do is only rely on that, or rely too heavily on it. So a lot of guys will get information from a buddy who was there 10 years ago. It's like, oh, hey, yeah, we hunted here. There was elk everywhere. And they're like, sweet. And I'm not saying you guys did this, but I just want to caution a lot of people is that always have your own backup plans. And it goes back into having a lot of plans. It's a great starting point, but I see so many people be like, oh, man, Joe said there was going to be elk there, and there just wasn't. And then it's like they almost give up on the hunt when there wasn't a bull standing where Joe told them to. And so I would just caution people like, yeah, when you get information, take it with a grain of salt. Even I do, like from good buddies. Like guys I know really well that are great hunters, they can tell me like, hey, last year we got an elk here. Sweet. And I'll be like, great, that's a really good starting point, but I'm also going to have all of my own plans.
Yeah, and I think, for us, like our experience with anyone having to do with anything about elk has been 180 degrees different than whitetail hunting. Nobody wants to and so we're through this journey of podcasting, we're starting to interact with a little bit different character of people, I'd say. So we are starting to seek out and find those people that are actually willing to help you. Because that's kind of what we're trying to do is, like I said, I've touted myself as the world's worst bow hunter for as long as we've had the podcast. So we're trying to learn as we go along. But I would say that with elk hunting and Western hunting, and John can attest to this too, is like everyone that we talk to, and I think the difference is because we're not looking for trophy bulls. So we're just looking for any elk. So yeah. I would have been happy shooting that raghorn or the spike or whatever, because the only thing that was missing from our hunt was that pack out, that portion to complete that journey. Because to me, that would be like the culmination of the whole thing. And so I think most of the information that we've got has been like good, solid information, but we went into it knowing that could have been last year, and there could be a fire, there could be, numerous other things that have...
Could have been someone in there the day before killing one.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, you could just have people in there. And I think most people, have good intentions. And I'm not saying like all the information people are going to get is bad information. I think it just... people use it as a crutch, maybe. And I've been guilty of this too. Like going into a hunt, like, oh, so-and-so said this is the spot, we need to go here. And I didn't think about my own plan Bs, and that cost me, because, I got there. I can think of a specific hunt where the guy's like, man, you need to go here. And the road he told me was like gated. And it was like, you can't go there. And it's like 10 miles in. And it was like, is it worth going in there? Blah, blah, we work around, go the other way. But it just like never really panned out the way this guy had told me. And now I'm like trying to hit the drawing board while I'm on a hunt. And that's the one thing I hate doing, is trying to recalculate or going back to the drawing board whilst on a hunt.
So I'd like to talk, like I said, with this podcast, everything tends to kind of be a little bit self-serving, where I'm trying to learn, and for the listener as well. So I do want to get into a little bit of the antelope stuff, but I guess for somebody going out on their first elk hunt, and everything that you've done, everything that you've talked every person that you've talked to, all of your experiences, what would be the top 3 things that you would say that might be overlooked? Because everybody, is going to learn about the north-facing slopes and the wind and, try to get away from people, all of that sort of thing. But what would be your top 3, like, overlooked or things most common mistakes for a new elk hunter?
I would say the number one most common mistake for a new elk hunter is trying to go, air quotes, backcountry. And I think it's trying to hike into a specific spot. And I think if you're a new elk hunter, you need to focus on places that allow you to be mobile. That is huge. And even though, I horseback into the backcountry and I am not mobile at all, there's a difference there. And I just think it's really important in those early days to be able to have a lot of opportunities. And that's how you're going to learn. So I think that's the number one thing. And I think preparation and not so much gear. Like, I think people worry about gear too much and they don't plan enough. And I don't mean I will just leave it at don't plan enough, whether it's plan B or not. And the other thing is I think people are, I totally get that it's the experience you want. If you want to go you want to come out west and you want to hike to the top of the tallest mountain and have that backcountry experience, then by all means go for it. But if you want to kill elk, I think it's better to be more mobile.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of the mistake we made. We kind of stuck to one. Realistically, it was a small area compared to what the unit was. We could have taken multiple days and just branched off and gone farther. Got away from that and tried to find elk in different areas.
Yeah, for sure. And so to change it up and to transition over to, we're trying to go on this antelope hunt, and I guess what's your background with archery antelope hunting? Because there's the spot and stalk and there's the sit on water hole type thing.
So I grew up in Oregon, which antelope tags are about the same as mountain goat tags, and not quite, but very, very, very hard to get. It is almost a once in a lifetime thing, maybe twice. And so you grow up with this dream of going antelope hunting, this one-time event. And so I think it was the first one I got. Yeah, so it would have been Montana. So I hunted Montana archery antelope. It was a tag you could get. It's the 900 tag. It's a great tag. It's, basically you put in and you get it. And it's a great opportunity to archery antelope hunt. Excuse me. And so that one I ended up spot and stalking, had a blast. It was a fun hunt. I think I was done in a few days, so it's not a really long hunt. I drew a tag in Nevada for another archery antelope hunt, did that one. Drew a pretty coveted tag in Oregon, and that one I wanted to sit on water just because it was a pretty premier area. So I've done a little bit of the sitting on water, enough to know that it's an endurance sport, if you will. And then I've done quite a bit or taken a couple bucks with spot and stock as well.
So I think the spot and stock is the way that we're leaning. And, like we had talked about, it's a much different, even going into it, thought process than elk. Because I guess the way that I view it, and like I said, driving through all the states to get to Idaho and seeing antelope everywhere and seeing, you watch videos or you talk to other guys that have hunted them, it seems like it's going to be a million different blown stalks. And, then you come out ahead on one of them or something goes right.
It's a game of numbers at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that,
what's your goal with an antelope hunt?
just to shoot an antelope. There is no. We were literally we were talking about it last night, and I mean, obviously you can see one antelope is bigger than the other, but I couldn't score one. I could look at a Boone and Crockett antelope, and you could put one that was half the size right next to it, and be like, well, they're both pretty good antelope. I mean, it's like might as well be hunting chupacabra. Like I couldn't tell you which one is bigger.
Yeah. Well, I've shot big ones, and I have almost no desire to like. If I saw I've seen some cool bucks. Like last summer, I found a buck we called El Diablo, and he just had one of the coolest racks I've ever seen. And that would be cool, but like from that, I've killed a giant or a good buck, so like I don't have a whole lot of desire. So for me, it's just about chasing them. I love spot and stop, and so just doing it is fun. And the reason I ask this is because this is going to go back to that planning situation where I think it's so important. And you're going to come into this and say, oh, well, I don't want to set water. I just want to spot and stock. But on day 3 or 4, when you have had 0 opportunities, it'll be really nice if you have a backup plan and you know about a water hole, and that water hole's got antelope on it. So if it was me, and we can kind of dive into a lot of planning stuff, I would definitely be thinking about those fallback plans as far as water. So if you're like, okay, well, here's a very remote water hole, or here's all the remote water holes. The first day, and this is a great scouting opportunity, because unlike when I told you with elk, water doesn't matter, antelope, water 100% matters. So the first day, I'm going to go scout every remote water hole I can and just try to figure out where the antelope are. And I think that's, a part of just knowing, okay, which micro basins, and we call them basins, but really they're like swells really in the terrain, depending on where you hunt. But like what remote water has antelope around it or on it. And then from there, you're like, okay, we could always fall back to this water hole, but let's just spot and stock for the first 3 days.
Okay. And so one of the other things is like for us in particular, but so for some of our other listeners that might want to do, because I've heard you talk about, it being kind of like a hunt you could do like with your family or something like that. So like my father-in-law, he's on the podcast, and he's a riot, is 65 years old or whatever, not in great shape. He, he'll go out and hunt whitetails a mile back in with his climber, and he's still hunting the same way. But we talk about going on an elk hunt, and it's trying to figure out like, how we can do an elk hunt with him and whatever. So I think it's probably a good like start for him to go out there and kind of do that and move through, little undulations in the country and climb up to these high points and do some glassing and stuff like that. I guess the physicality of even the spot and stock, what do you think that is, like on a scale of 1 to mountain goat hunting?
It's tough. Like spot and stock antelope is pretty tough. I've had some brutal stocks. I think if you have 2 guys, it's different, because a lot of the times I've hunted by myself, and that's, I would say, twice as hard, if not 3 times as hard, to spot and stock antelope by yourself versus having a decoy of any kind, whether it's a antelope or like even a moo cow if you're in the moo cow area, but like just something. The antelope decoys are worth their weight in gold when you're trying to stalk, just to take that attention off you. But they're tough. I mean, they're not impossible, but it's not an easy stalk. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, we have little to no experience stalking anything, so it's just kind of watching everybody else and how it goes, and like that's what I mean. The way that I think about it is, like I say, it's just going to be in my head, like the hunt of a spot and stock antelope is either go find a high point, glass them, figure out where they're at, kind of like what you're talking about, and then go try and figure out how to get in on them, or drive around in some of these areas that are, open to hunting, see some antelope, and then figure out a plan and look. And I mean, I guess, in listening and watching some of it is like, pull up Onyx, find where there is those little low spots and figure out how you can use the wind and kind of move. And then once you get into a spot where you're on the same plane as them, then that's where it comes into your skill level and luck, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, spot stock antelope is pretty freaking tough. Montana actually has some great, because the terrain, I think, is good. Like, if you can get behind some terrain, whereas, Montana or Wyoming has terrain too, and it just depends on the unit you choose. But a lot of places in Wyoming, we're talking antelope can see you from, half mile away. And if they've been pressured much past opening day, man, it can be tough to get within rifle range.
So that was one of the questions I was going to have for you is like, how, driving through, it seems like the antelope population of the western states is more than the people. I saw more antelope than I did see cars or people, I feel like, in a lot of those areas. So that pressure, when we think about it for whitetail deer, we hunt in Michigan, one of the highest pressure states, the hunter density numbers just through the roof. So getting away from people, etc. I think that's, one of the things you're going to have to bank on if you're on public land. But with the numbers being what they are, what is the importance and the time frame, not knowing anything about antelope and their rutting activity, the amount, their habits, how they move through the day, what they're doing. Is it important to be there for opening day, for archery, because that's going to be start? Or, a part of me thinks that, like, as soon as you get into September 1st, maybe those antelope have been hunted, but there's going to be a lot of guys that are elk hunting. The further you get through the season, there may be less. That's just my thought process, is like more of those people like yourself are probably going to be saying, okay, well, I'm going to be elk hunting in September. It's September now.
So imagine if I drove through Michigan and I was like, man, there's friggin' a whitetail everywhere. I'm sitting in like middle, I don't know, I don't even know what time of year you would see the most. Let's just say December or late November. And I'm like, man, there's a whitetail everywhere. It can't be that hard to kill a whitetail. You'd probably laugh at me and be like, yeah, well, when you get in there in the woods, it's a little bit different on opening day or opening week, right?
Right.
So similarly, hunting, let's just use Wyoming, for example. You see a lot of antelope. Most of those places you can't hunt. And it just, if you look at your Onyx, it kind of depends. But you would be amazed. You think you're seeing antelope everywhere. But realistically, you're only seeing antelope on private lands. And when you start to really hunt for them, you realize that when the second they touch public lands, they're getting hunted. So the catch-22 in Wyoming is that for a unit, the higher the points for a unit in Wyoming doesn't necessarily mean that the quality of antelope is better. It just means that there's more public land. So the coveted units in Wyoming are more who has more public land that has antelope on it, so low ground. Give you an example. Last year, I drew an antelope tag in Wyoming, and I was down there. I took a trip down there in the summertime to scout, and there was antelope everywhere. And I was like, oh, this is going to be an easy hunt. This is just stupid. There's more antelope than people by like a 10x proportion. There's antelope everywhere. And then I went down, I think opening weekend. I don't know if I hit opening day or not. But I do a little bit of hunting with like old school guns. And so I took my Sharps rifle down there. And twice I put stocks on antelope and had people shooting at the antelope before I got there. And it was this realization that like there's people just running around everywhere lobbing bullets at antelope that are touching public. was like, this is chaos. I'm out of here. I don't even have like a different gun, so didn't really work out. I only had it for a day, and I was like, well, I'll come back midweek. No one will be here because this is a weekend. I think it was opening weekend actually. And I came back and did end up. When I came back in the midweek, the antelope had very strategically been on all private, and all the public. I mean, there's very little public in this unit, but it was very tough to find antelope on public. Still antelope everywhere. Just they knew where they could not be hunted at. And I ended up killing getting my buck and my doe, and it was doable. But this is rifle, not archery. Similarly, I know one of my good friends. He's hunting archery down there, and had a hard time. A lot of the bucks get chased around, and there's hunting pressure is real, and the amount of public land that is there is a big piece of that. And so if you want to draw a 0-point unit or even a second choice unit, then those antelope are going to be hunted. Period. End of conversation. There's not going to be a lot of places to hunt them. So the very limited spots are going to have people hunting them. So if I was you and I was diehard set about, because with Wyoming you can hunt archery or rifle. If I was dead set on killing a buck with archery equipment, I would be there opening day.
Now, during the opening day, the first week of season, are you guys using decoys and stuff? I mean, how well do they work for that? I mean, obviously they're not in their rutting phase at that point. Or are you just using them as...
They're not. I mean, I guess you're right. I would probably be focused more on using like a moo cow decoy or water holes. I can't say. I think you could get away with hunting in September, like you said, when most guys are elk hunting, because the long, it's like a catch-22. The longer you wait, the more towards rut they get, and the dumber they get. But there's a lot more eyes, and so first week of season, you might be able to find a big buck that just doesn't really care, and slip on him or find out where there's water, and so, man, I don't know. It kind of goes both ways. Like there's benefits of being there opening day. There's benefits of being there, late September before the rifle season start.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what John's expectations are like for the hunt, but for me, it's like I just want to get out there and screw up on a whole bunch of animals. I think
that's definitely my intentions too. I just want to get out there and chase them around. I mean, I've been wanting to do it for a long time. So, and then see, it was 2 years ago when I was out in Montana and just seeing them all around. I'm like, man, I gotta get out here, at least hunt some antelope if I can't get out here on an elk trip.
The thing I like about the August seasons is that they tend to be a little more relaxed. I feel like it gives you a better opportunity for spot and stock.
Right.
So outside of the decoys, and I've heard you talk about it, and it seems like there's different philosophies on, do you want that lighter, faster arrow? I mean, for the archery setup, I mean, what is your... John usually asks this question because he's the bow guy, but what archery setup are you shooting right now with arrow weight, broadheads, etc.?
So for me, I don't switch from my elk setup, so I'm still shooting full metal jackets with 125 grain kudu on the front, and I use that for archery antelope. If I was you and I was like, oh well, I wanted to, if I was just someone who wanted to set up the perfect setup for antelope. The reason I do that is because I like to keep everything the same, and I don't want to switch. That's what I shoot all summer. That's what I'm going to shoot, if I go antelope hunting before elk season. So I stick to that. That's not to say that that's the best antelope setup. I would definitely go light and fast if it was me. And I would probably go micro diameter, and I'd probably go expandables, just because you're going to be fighting the wind.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're just singing the tune of John. So I'm a simple guy. Like my stuff is all the same, and it's different every day. I'm looking at 5 different arrow setups right here, right now. And so when we went elk hunting, he completely rebuilt his bow with 80-pound limbs, and I don't know what
560 grain arrow.
Yeah, 560 grain full length arrows.
Yeah, that's what I like for elk is, single bevel, lots of weight, hit them hard. And then antelope, I curse it because they're gone. They're in the next county before my arrow gets there. It's like, damn it.
And I mean, like I say, on that elk, I was perfectly comfortable taking that shot at 60. We do around here, the Total Archery Challenge comes by, and we shoot, out to over 100 all summer long. So we're planning for, half that, 50, 60 yards is a
comfortable shot.
Yeah, it's super doable. What's the average ranges, or, I mean, what is, obviously your ability, your comfort level is going to be, within that ethical range, but I mean, what is the average shot, would you say, outside of a water hole scenario?
So here's a funny story. The first antelope I ever shot at was in Montana, and I had a friend that knew some antelope were, and so he set up this blind on this fence line where they were coming down off the hill and crossing, and this antelope jumps the fence, and he's standing there on this hill, has no idea I'm even there, not even looking at the blind. And I launched an arrow at 60 yards exactly, and that antelope was 10 feet away when the arrow hit the ground. And I thought, oh, wow, this is going to be difficult. Like, this is insane. I've seen jump a string, but this antelope was 10 feet away when that arrow hit the ground. And I was like, okay. And from there, I think I've taken one at 30, one at 66, mostly closer, 40, somewhere in there. I would say out west, it's nothing to have a 60-yard shot. I think anything over 60, that's like, antelope is just going to move. The 66-yard shot I took was on a bedded antelope and just 12 ringed him, but it was like anything other, and I think over 60, and there's too many factors of an antelope. They're just too fast. Even if you have a ultra fast bow and you micro diameter and all that jazz, like I don't like to shoot over 60, but I think, if you're spotting stock, it's just how close you can get, right? And I think getting below 50 is very difficult on a spot and stock antelope.
So, I mean, obviously out west you're dealing with winds. I mean, So, I mean, I guess it depends on what state or what area you're in. But, I mean, like, what are you comfortable shooting at, and what wind-wise?
Oh, wind-wise?
Yeah, I mean...
I've never really judged wind. My house is windy as all get out. So we shoot every day in the wind. I actually have to shoot before the wind picks up. I would say 10 miles an hour, but I honestly don't know that I could answer that. Okay. If I was feeling the wind, I'd be like, yeah, it's too windy. I don't know what the number is. I've never really taken a wind reading when I was out there and been like, oh, it's too windy. Now, it's a good idea. I probably should. But I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that. Sorry.
Well, I mean, because that's one of the things. I mean, if you're taking, like, a perfect example is, I'm out in Idaho, and it's like the most stressful situation, and there wasn't any wind, but it was like, okay, I'm not comfortable taking that shot. And the average shot is, say, 50 to 60 yards, and, the wind is whipping across the plains, and you're trying to figure out, like, am I wasting an opportunity by not taking the shot because it's windy, or is that is that the baseline? Like, that's not even windy. Like, this is windy,
Yeah. Like I said, that's a great question that I don't have the answer to because I've never really taken a meter, but I would, like, if I put that into context of like a situation, say I'm putting in a stock and I get to 60 yards and the wind is it's huffing and puffing. It's not even consistent. I'm definitely gonna be like, well, I guess we got to get closer. I'm gonna move in. 40 yards, my arrow's not doing much. Mine's pretty damn heavy, which is, I guess, an upside. So at 40 yards, I might drift an inch or two, but I can compensate for that. So I guess that's kind of how I think about it. It's like, I guess I just got to get closer. I wouldn't take, a 50, 60 yard shot, not with my setup at least, with a 15, 20 mile an hour wind.
Okay. Yeah, because like I say, going out there, our expectation is just, I guess, to see an antelope and get within 100 yards and screw it up. And then if we do any better than that, then it's going to be a success. Because
that'll be accomplished, I promise.
Because I feel like that's the fun part, and I think everybody that measures. Obviously you're paying money or whatever, but if you measure your success on just the kill, and then hire an outfitter and hunt with a rifle, and you're still you'll definitely have higher odds of success than going out to an area you've never been to, hunting an animal that you've never attempted to kill.
Antelope is so fun, and archery, like, I love going to archery antelope hunting just because it is a challenge. You put in a bunch of stocks, and I don't know, it's just a fun hunt. For me, I use it as a great way to get gear tested before an elk hunt. Kind of get back, knock the rust off, so to speak, because it's been a while, and it'll definitely teach you a few things about stalking. Like, it is one of the more difficult animals to stalk, that's for sure.
Now, I heard in one of your podcasts, you recommend knee pads and
yes.
And like at least some kind of glove to you don't tear your hands up.
Yeah, that comes from a Nevada hunt. I put a 6.5 hour stock on in a hunt. I think it was over 100. It was over 100 degrees, 6.5 hour stock on rocks and brutal, nasty nothingness, and just the ground was hot, burning my hands, and no knee pads, no gloves. I've taken my face mask off and wrapped it around one of my hands, and was just kind of using one hand because the rocks were so freaking hot. But yeah, knee pads if you want to put in some stocks. That, and everything prickly. Good pair of really thick wool socks, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's take your boots off and stock in your thick wool socks.
Okay, yeah.
So I think we talked about your three things for elk hunting. For a guy going out antelope hunting, I guess it sounds like you're real big on Wyoming, but you've hunted some other states. Why is Wyoming? Because Wyoming sounds like a draw where, like, we're looking at South Dakota because you put in and it's basically guaranteed type thing.
Well, for the record, I've never hunted South Dakota, so I know guys have hunted it. I know it's closer to you. And one of the big things when I talk about out of state hunts, I always tell people, go to the one that's closer to you, because it just, it's the same reason I don't hunt in Mexico, even though I think it's better than Idaho. It's way farther away, and so it's going to change the experience and how much I get to go there. So yeah, I wouldn't bat an eye at going to South Dakota. There's probably less people there, so you might be able to get some better hunting.
Okay. And with those, like I say, the three things for elk hunting, for a new guy, for an antelope hunt, what do you think would be the top three things, like, not to overlook? Like I say, you hear our perspective where it's just going to be, I guess a fun time, really, because it's like, I think, again, the kill would be a bonus, but to get out there and, try and put some stocks on and, try and hone your skills, I guess. And that's one thing, I think, with all of these things that we're talking about, kind of like what you said, is kind of like knock the rust off. That elk hunt, even though it, we didn't know what we were doing going into it, the amount of time that I spent studying Onyx, the maps, shooting my bow, it made everything for whitetail season like that much easier. Like it was so much different, carrying a, 30-pound stand in, where we had 50-pound packs or 60-pound packs. Like when we started, it was no big deal. And we were going in, 3/4 of a mile, and we were going in, 3 miles or 5 miles or whatever. So I guess from that point, like, what do you think are the most overlooked things or 3 like key points to like not downplay for an antelope hunt?
I would say think about where other people are going to be, and that's kind of tough because depends on every state. I think it goes back to having backup plans. I would say throw a blind in just in case. I think it's a great option because 4 days. I don't know how long you're going for, but like you're going for 5 days and 4 days, you're like, man, we could kill one if we had this. Make sure you like kind of it goes into like the logistics of an out-of-state hunt. When it comes to an antelope hunt, you have the ability. You're probably going to be truck camping. I don't foresee you kind of bivouacking on an antelope hunt. So, I mean, bring the kitchen sink. Like, bring everything. I think that's the one thing. People come out west and, oh, man, I should have brought a decoy or I should have brought this. Like I say, knee pads and decoys and a blind and, everything you need to make this hunt successful no matter how it goes. I think that's really important. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And I've done that, not taking, just bombed out there. I'm going to do a spot and stock hunt. Well, what if the spot and stock hunt turns into, what if you roll your ankle and now you have to sit water? How are you going to do that? So that's kind of a few things to think about. If you have a meat cart too, I don't know, that's just popped in my head, but that's kind of an overlooked thing. A lot of guys use meat carts because you could be walking across the desert for quite a ways.
That brings me to another point. It just kind of popped in my head. It was something that I was thinking about. But one thing about the blind, is there like a camel pattern? I mean, everything that we have is mossy oak, a real tree, or whatever. And I don't think that that would seem to be like out of place out there, out in the middle of the field. They're
all out of place. I don't think it matters. And they really look at those. They look, oh, what's that thing? But as long as it's not a human, because I set blinds on. It's just flat as flat can be, and you could see for a mile in every direction. And there's a blind down there. I don't think it matters.
Okay, but on that meat cart thing, I've heard you talk about it, and it was something that I'm not or wasn't aware of at all about like the intricacies of like antelope meat being kind of different, I guess.
Yeah, one of the things, a lot of people won't like antelope meat, but it's probably more their preparation. So antelope meat is very important to get it cooled down as fast as you possibly can. And say you're on a September hunt out west or even an August hunt, it's going to be hot. And so a lot of guys that hunt out of state like you guys are going to do will take a little Costco chest freezer and a generator and get that thing just cooled down ASAP. I think that's the most important thing, and it's something that gets overlooked because people like to treat it like it's a whitetail, and it's not. You got to get that thing skin off now and cooled down as fast as you possibly can.
Okay,
that's definitely some good info there. We'll have to invest in one of the $200 chest freezers.
Oh, I think it's well worth it, man. As you could just have that chest freezer and on a trailer and a Jenny. That's the way to go.
Well, Cody, I mean, we've kept you here for, a bit over an hour now, and I just want to thank you for coming on. I don't think we've got anything else. I'd really like to talk to you after, we come back from our antelope hunt and kind of maybe debrief that and kind of go through.
It'd be fun to see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll just be probably more of like, oh, I wish we would have done this. Or like, yeah, we certainly screwed them all up. That was, pretty much kind of what we expected.
Well, that's pretty much the basis of hunting, isn't it?
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, the world's worst bow hunter over here. It's like, well, I had 19 opportunities and didn't quite pan out. But so where can everybody follow? I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going on. So, I mean, guess kind of tell everybody kind of what you're doing and kind of how they can follow along with all your stuff.
Yeah, it's I mean, follow my podcast, The Rich Outdoors, and pretty much all my socials, The Rich Outdoors. So follow along wherever, whenever, and if you guys got any questions, let me know. Shoot me a message. I'm pretty good about answering them all, so try to anyway. But yeah, I think that's kind of The Rich Outdoors on all the platforms, and we actually just started a Patreon page, and so we're doing a lot of. We would basically have our elk content and our muley content moving over there, and doing some cool giveaways. We're going to take one of the Patreons on a hunt this year. So like I said, we're going to basically teach them how to scout, how to look at maps, how to find elk, how to hunt elk, all that good stuff. So it's kind of it's the starter to what is, I guess, more to come, if you will. So hoping to give away a bunch of hunts on there. But we'll see. But yeah, but thanks, guys. Really appreciate you having me on. Hopefully I helped in some way or shape or form.
Well, you also have your, is it the Backcountry
Fuel box,
yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, so we also have the Backcountry Fuel box. It's a monthly subscription for like backcountry meals, snacks, bars, and really that started just as someone who's way too busy to find all this cool new stuff myself. I saw one of these subscription boxes. I thought, man, they should have one of those for like green bellies and fat fudge and all these cool things that I want to try. And it kind of gave the idea to a few people, and it never really took off. And I, just wanted the box so bad myself. I guess I made it for myself. But it's really taken off, and it's really cool, really fun. And man, it's blown me away at how many cool companies are out there for, backpack snacks, meals, all that kinds of stuff. So some really cool options out there. It's really fun just to get to try it every month. And I think the secret personal benefit to me is like I always have snacks on hand, which is, so I got to make sure I get my box every month so I have enough snacks to go out and scout or move cameras or whatever I'm doing.
So that's actually like it's a perfect thing for the guys like us out east that, that was one of the things that we, research and try, and Adam ended up making his own food, but I was trying all different, going up to the local, was it 37 North, and trying to find, freeze-dried meals and figure out which ones I liked and stuff. So that's definitely something, for like our listeners that would definitely
one of the
out.
things we really want to do, and what we're trying to build, is I really want to turn this into the Yelp of backcountry food. And I want it to be, we see these products come out and you're like, oh, is it any good? Am I going to like it? Well, how cool would it be if there was 500 reviews on a certain meal from guys like you that hunted and did these kind of things? And, so as we kind of do this, we're really trying to push for reviews, and we're trying to push to become the Yelp of backcountry food, essentially. We also want to add kind of a feature that, say you guys are going to Idaho for 10 days or 8 days, and you're like, oh, I like these, and I like these green bellies, and I like these fat fudges or these F-bombs. As you add to cart per day, it's going to show you your caloric intake, your protein levels, all your macros. So okay, I got 3,600 calories per day, and here's the recommended. And when you hit ship, it's basically going to shrink wrap each individual day and ship it to you in a dry bag. So you have your 8-day trip ready to go, all your meal prep done, and you don't even have to worry about it.
Oh man, that sounds awesome.
So that's where we're going. We're hoping to get there. We don't want to grow too fast. I'm really focused on doing it right and not just trying to grow bigger than our britches, so to speak. So making sure we do it right and focus on the box, getting the box nailed down. So we've been doing the box for right at about a year now. So hopefully this year we'll kind of be launching some more stuff with what guys can order, and as far as, trip planning and things like that, meal preparation.
Cool.
Well, Cody, that sounds awesome. And, if there's anything that we can do, when you're ready to go live on that, we can let all of our listeners know, because that sounds amazing. I mean, I know that's what John had, spreadsheets, and they had everything, doing all that stuff. But we just really appreciate you coming on here and taking the time with us today. So I think that's pretty much all we've got.
Guys. Well, I appreciate it, and it's cool to see guys just kind of getting after it and pulling the plug and going for it. Going elk hunting, going antelope hunting, and doing those things. I think not enough people I think too many people put that on a pedestal and never end up doing it.
Yeah, kind of the basis of what we're doing here. So for all of our listeners, get out there and
try
get
something
after
new.
it. So, all right. Well, thank you, Cody, and just stay on the line here real quick. I think that's pretty much all we got for the day.
Oh, thank you.
Romantic, isn't it? Shut up and sit down.